Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second or third midway point of our guest lecture series for the fall. Today is kind of an interesting day for me because I get to introduce not just a collaborator, but also a very dear friend, Ebrahim Poustinchi. He is an associate professor at the school at Kent State at the College of Architectural and Environmental Design. He's also the founder of his own research practice, which is Studio EP, and he's also the founder and director of Rad Lab at Kent State, which is a robotically augmented lab. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention, and I'm going to embarrass her for a second, but his partner and wife, who's also amazingly talented, is here, Yasemin. As I said, today is kind of an interesting day. I'm not going to read his bio. I will keep things short. But being able to introduce someone who I've known for a very long time and have been working with, I'm excited for him to be able to show you the different ways in which the umbrella of architecture branches out into different scales, different mediums, and starts to redefine in a lot of different ways what could be contemporary design for us. So with that being said, I will keep it short. Please, at the end of the lecture, if you have any questions, I'll come and bring the microphones to you. But with that, please welcome Ebrahim Poustinchi.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Andrea and James, for your very kind introduction. It's truly a pleasure to be here. And as James mentioned, we go way back, and it's been a pleasure to call you a friend and to work together on multiple projects and collaborate on design projects as well as our beloved, baby project, Purple. So thank you for having me. I mean, I had the pleasure to meet some of the students, a few of them, and I'm excited to the discussion already that is going to be after the presentation. But what I'm going to talk about today, I frame it as it's a series of projects that I'm going to talk about, but I'll frame it as what I refer to as fuzzy cyborg worlds. And that's kind of a framing or a discussion around the idea of a world or world building or worlds that are designed by and for human and non-human together. So it's the idea of cyber-physicality, dialogue between machine and human, and looking at that as a productive friction or productive kind of interstitial quality that kind of generates in-betweenness. But before going any further, I just wanted to dedicate this lecture to my very dear friend who is not physically between us anymore, that you know her, of course, Janice Hanako Shimizu, which she's been a really important part of our book, of course, but also a really dear friend. And again, we of course miss her, but again, her impact has been, imprinted in our lives. So, Studio EP and Rad Lab has multiple, scoop of projects, but the majority of the work deals with, again, the idea of cyber physicality when it deals with bridging the worlds of physical and digital in a way. So the ideas of the projects ranging from patents and works that are dealing with representation, cyber physical fabrication, robotically augmented videography, AR, VR, and things of that nature. And I feel the audio might be a little too loud, so I'm just gonna give you a little bit of peace back. But the idea of kind of bridging these worlds of physical and digital and trying to kind of find potential creative frictions or potential creative opportunities at these intersections. So that ranges from design projects that we do at Rad Lab to the practices that we do at Studio EP, to some of the studio work that we've done and seminars, all the way to the experimental design research, to technical developments, as I mentioned, as patents or as software hardware developments that we put out for public access and so on and so forth. So the spectrum is really, or the scope of work is really focused in a way on computational design and cyber physicality in one sense. At the same time, it's expanded across multiple disciplines and multiple kind of takes or nuances across multiple takes or multiple disciplines through these kind of shifting lenses of aesthetical conversations and technical precision. That being said, I think it's safe to say that's one of the very few labels that I proudly wear, and I'm a formalist, and I mean that, of course, in a sense that we are, having the conversation in architectural sense, but I don't necessarily mean it formalism against functionalism in that binary, but rather in terms of the literature kind of movements and in terms of the kind of the idea of formalism as a way that you would deal with in Russian constructivism as a literature movement. So it's a way that you would deal with, or you would kind of look through the world, and form is what you would see things through. So it's again more than the binary in architecture of form and function. Rather, it's a way of, it's quote unquote ideological way to look at the world. And again, I think, one of the reasons I'm wearing this kind of label proudly is that it's kind of, frankly, very obvious. So if I don't say this, you would realize it very soon. So I better just say it out loud. But again, with a quick search or with looking at some of the projects we do, from exhibition work to some of the design works, the speculative works, objects, projects, product, so on and so forth, you'll see this thread of form as one of the drivers of the conversation, whether it's aesthetically driving the conversation, whether it's a formal project in a studio, or all the way to the technical work even that we do with robotic kind of projects in Rad Lab. So this, for instance, it may not look like a robotic controller or device that controls the robot in real time, but it is actually a robot arm controller that deals with that. Or this may not look like a patent project that controls the robot in real time, but again, yet it does that. So again, form seems to be one of the major drivers of our conversation, or my conversation, when it comes to developing a project. So it's safe to say I'm a formalist. And part of my interest is to question the binaries that are existing in our kind of discipline at large, and in our world maybe at larger. And one of the specific ones that we're going to discuss today is the dual between the physical and digital. And maybe to give it a little bit of a context, I would like to point out to the book by Mario Carpo, The Second Digital Turn. And his book, he's talking about the second digital turn of architecture in contrast to the first digital turn. Again, early 90s versus kind of, like 2010-ish, where the first digital turn was around the idea, or centered around the idea of fabrication and changing the way we make. The second one is the way, or changes the way we think. I would like, and it's one of the conversations we usually have with James as well, but I like to propose something after that, which is something that changes our way that we experience things or understand things. So it's not the way that we build things digitally necessarily, or think about things digitally, but how we understand or experience things cyber-physically. And through that lens, I'm suggesting, which is the part of the name of the lecture today, borrowing the idea of fuzzy logic from Lotfi Ali Asgarzadeh, who is a mathematician, that probably helps me framing this in-betweenness, which is based on degrees of truth, different from the Boolean logic, which is 0 and 1. So again, for instance, if you're asking someone if something is digital or not, through the Boolean logic, it would be yes or no, but through the fuzzy logic, it would be qualitative measurement of that. So it would give you degrees of truth. So through that idea, I'm looking at physical and digital through an idea of dual and duet, and proposing basically a spectrum of hybridity and duet instead of basically a duality and a duet. A hybridity that is basically a dialogue between human, non-human, natural, artificial, and digital, physical. So to sum it up maybe as a statement, so we can look at projects through this lens, I'm interested in digitalizing the physical and physicalizing the digital as a way to create productive friction, and taking architecture and built environment as an extended version of the software and as a UI interface basically for that, and taking it as a medium for user experience, specifically looking at tangible technologies as a vehicle for this kind of processes, and looking into all of these together as a medium for post-digitality through some level of human-machine interaction, human-computer interaction, and some degrees of human-machine dialogue and autonomy. So with that, I'm going to talk about 3 categories of projects. So the first category, and slowly building up this fuzziness as we go through the project. So the first groups are creating this dialogue between the physical world and the digital world, but just connecting them, merely connecting them. So they include some of the patent projects we discussed or I mentioned, including the PX1, or some of the plugins which I'm going to mention in a second, which they are merely here to connect either of these 2 worlds, the physical world or the digital world, together. So one is, like, for example, PX1 is a patented controller that is designed for creative robotics, that sits in between the physical robot and the virtual environment of almost any interface, including your cell phone, including any software with simple communication features like UDP or TCP communication, and enables you to communicate with the robot, meaning that you'll be connecting the physical digital flawlessly and just making the communication possible. So in this case, controlling a robot in real time through the PX1. Another one would be Oriole plugin, which is enabling the robotic animation. It's a workflow plugin, to be more precise, that enables the the animation of the robot kind of a little bit more accessible through keyframe design. Again, having the ability to connect the physical and digital through the simple ideas of animation design or things of that nature within the design software like Rhino. Or another example of this connection would be RoboBuild, the 2015 project, which we did during my time at Washington State University, which is basically simply bringing out a mesh or 3D mesh of a sphere out of a computer and having that connection like physically available. Basically, it's a design and fabrication platform, custom-made robotic design and fabrication platform, which enables the users to use their cell phone to simultaneously design and fabricate using a 19 phase kind of mesh. So it's kind of a sphere with 19 faces, and you'll be able to use your phone to kind of manipulate and design it. But again, more than anything, obviously, it's a surface project. You can take this and apply it into any other surface as an idea of connecting the digital to physical and kind of bridging these worlds. But again, to my case, or frankly, to the framework that we discussed in terms of the fuzzy Cyborg World, these are in a way a little naive in a way that they are one-directional pathways. So it's translating one thing from one world to another, but not necessarily creating any major fusion of any sort that creates otherness or otherhood. That's why, or again, same scenario with some of these projects with, again, recent projects with augmented reality or AR. Again, taking some of the ideas of the modeling process or data kind of driven form making and turning them into experienceable or inhabitable kind of AR objects. So feel free to scan the QR code if you like to test out the object. But again, it's a one-way road, right? So you're not necessarily making a cyber physical experience. It's just the physical thing becomes digital or the digital thing becomes physical. So it's one way at this point. And again, arguably, it's a little, compared to the framework that I claimed at the beginning of the conversation or at the beginning of the talk, it's a little, it's falling short in terms of the fusion that I was promising, if you like. The second group, however, starts to go a little further into that fusion. So these are the projects that are looking into translating a specific quality from one world to another. So the idea of taking the digital quality, for instance, animation, and taking that into the physical world, or the idea of, or again, simulative qualities of a digital environment into a physical world, or the idea of physicality of the built environment, like gravity, like materiality, tangibility, and things of that nature, to be taken to virtual environment. And these are some of the projects that I've tried to challenge those kind of notions through these projects. So, for example, Art Augmented Robotic Telepresence project is a project during COVID that I was invited by Arcadia, the conference, to host a workshop during COVID as part of their conference, and a robotic workshop, obviously, as part of the conference. And my immediate thought or question was, how can I have participants to join the Rad Lab space in like during COVID, obviously, and like virtually. So the question immediately turned to be the question of presence and cyber-physical or telepresence. And we try to break down the idea of presence into the, again, which is a physical idea, obviously, and trying to virtualize that, again, translating a physical idea into a virtual quality. And again, naively or kind of simplifying that question into two qualities of motion and modification, we developed and initiated this custom-made workflow and platform that we're going to talk about it, which is a series of twins of RadLab in multiple different platforms. So first, we made a twin for RadLab digitally to control the robot online through the Grasshopper platform and through a custom-made Grasshopper platform. And Rhino as a way for our participants across the globe to be able to, in real time, interact with our robot in RadLab. So we developed a twin of RadLab in Rhino environment to be able to then simulate some of the physical forces and kind of create simulated kind of conditions to duplicate or resemble physicality. We used animation software Maya, so we made another twin in Maya software for RadLab. And the third, to be able to create augmented reality scenarios to be able to modify RadLab. We created another twin of RadLab in Unity to then allow our audience to be able to modify RadLab in real time. So all of them together, we put these kind of platforms in a cyber-physical kind of sequence together as a way to generate this network of real-time controlling and streaming systems, so the audience and participants could join RadLab in real time from across the globe. And using the real-time control of the robot and the camera that was on the robot, they could move around in a RadLab as if they were present and see around and look around. And using the augmented reality tools on the robot, they could start manipulating and modifying RadLab by adding or removing components. So this is the custom-made platforms. They were all streaming in real time. And one person at a time, they could join the controlling platform. This is what you would see if you were in charge of the controller. You would have a first-person kind of view of RadLab moving around, and kind of at the same time having the ability to add or remove things from RadLab through the augmented reality kind of platform that you've developed in Unity. And again, everything simultaneously was getting streamed online. So in addition to the person that was running the experience or running the robot, they were able to kind of other participants were able to kind of see what's going on and basically join the experience in a way to kind of be present at RadLab and kind of take advantage of this cyber-physical presence or telepresence. And again, for us at RadLab, myself and my graduate assistant at the time, we were able to see the person that was running the robot on a screen on the robot as if they were present in RadLab at the same time. So again, this whole idea of breaking this idea of present into a sequence of events of motion, visual presence, and modification of RadLab was really the ability to kind of mimic or simulate this idea, and then at the end, having the full kind of setup or experience is streamed in 360, so everyone could basically join in that sense. So this was mainly the idea of, again, connecting these two worlds together, but translating some of the qualities from one into another. And similar to this, but maybe in reverse, is the one object at a time project. Around the same time, in 2021, I was invited to curate an exhibition for A+D Museum in Los Angeles. And again, the immediate question was how we can challenge the notion of exhibition now that we are going to have it virtual. And then obviously we were lucky to have, lots of amazing designers and artists, again, including your very own James Crestes, as part of the exhibition, one object at a time. But again, the idea was how to display these objects as a world building exercise, trying to mimic some of the physicality of a physical world without necessarily duplicating the physical world exactly, taking advantage of the virtuality of the virtual kind of environment without, again, losing the connections to the physical world. So the exhibition consisted of two experiences: one real-time VR game, VR experience, multiplayer, that everyone could join in real time, which again was a world-building exercise or world-building project made with the objects of the designers who participated, and again turning this project into, or turning this exhibition into an inhabitable world was again an attempt to anchor it down or anchor it back into the idea of physicality. So again, you could put on a headset, or again, as a PC player, you could just in real time join, meet up with friends. Actually, I think you can still do that if you get to it, if I share the link with you. So you can meet up there and start to inhabit and interact these objects, which you would, in a normal physical exhibition, you won't be able to necessarily touch them or inhabit them. But also to interact with them in real life, in real time, without necessarily losing the full connectivity of or connection that you have with the physical world in terms of the tangibility of some of these parts, in terms of the interactivity of some of these elements, so on and so forth. And if you're wondering, if you couldn't say, that's James's object. But yeah, so on and so forth. So it's really the idea of how these objects could come together to produce this, world of kind of parts and pieces, one object at a time. So again, you may be familiar with Greg Lynn's Art of the World kind of project. And again, each of the participants, again, Greg Lynn, Ferda, Guven Chazil, Ivan Iskim, each of them with their very unique different languages. And again, as I said, James's, Ivan Bernal, each of the languages coming together at this dinner set, creating this established work, but at the same time giving you the opportunity to maybe, and I remember at the opening, Kelly Bear and Christy Bailey, they were saying this is probably the first time our object gets inhabited, because they have this blobby object that usually gets printed at a different scale. But so that was the general idea of the world. But again, to get it even more anchored to the physical world, I designed a few controllers across the world for participants to be able to design their own mini world, or if you like, their own hybrid objects. So using the controller, you could start to kit bash the objects by the participants to create your own mini world in a snow globe, or to create a compositional object, if you like. So again, in this case, I'm using Guven Ozil's object and Bitter Tank Farms as a way to create this compositional object. And again, without getting into the, because this lecture is not necessarily about the social political aspects of my work, but it's in a way trying to, and that it has some aspects to the hierarchy of designer, curator, and the user or audience conversation. So in a way, it's trying to flatten that relationship by letting the audience or the user to become part of the curatorial agency or curatorial or design kind of force. So it's really flattening that hierarchical relationship between the user and designer and agent and audience at the same time that it enables them to be part of the curatorial kind of region. And to be able to expand, again, partly because of the social political interests of my project at large, but this one specifically, to be able to expand our users beyond the ones who have access to VR and PC that can play VR. The exhibition, the shop part of the user or the museum shop of the exhibition was enabling the users to still engage in this curatorial experience through a custom postcard making process. So using the website or exhibition's websites, the user could take advantage of any of the objects designed by their favorite designer and co-create a postcard with their favorite designer and just basically drawing with the 3D objects and create a postcard as a collaboration and download that by clicking on the logo of the exhibition. So I have some examples here of these drawing apps. So this is by Gwench Ozil. This is by James Crestes. This is by Greg Lean. This is by Ferda Kolatan. This is by Brandon Ho. And, again, the idea of bridging these worlds together and trying to mimic qualities from physical world in the virtual. Again, the idea of having controller, the idea of having gravity, the idea of tangibility, so on and so forth. But the third category of projects are my attempt to make these projects or create these fuzzy worlds. So again, after attempting to connect the worlds, after attempting to translate qualities from one to another, I would argue whether failed or accepted. The third category that I'm going to discuss are the ones that are attempted to create these interstitial kind of third or kind of fused or fusion of worlds, if you like, that are neither nor but resulting in a tertiary type of composition. So Microhabitat Delta, the 2022 project, is one of those that I think is looking into creating something that it's a little more difficult to point out what is physical quality, what is digital, but rather it's some sort of cyber-physical in-between experience that is neither nor and kind of both and at the same time. So microhabitat is basically a very simple one-liner question of, or it stems from a one-liner interest of human-nature relationship, and we tend to really scale up the nature whenever we are interested in aesthetics of nature, meaning like imprinting articulations from the natural language into Baroque or Rococo or Art Nouveau, or having things that are imprinted architecturally at different scale than nature. So the question was, what if through the cyber-physical experience we could miniaturize ourselves rather than shifting a scale of the nature and inhabit the nature itself? So in this case, it's kind of a microhabitat that we can experience it and inhabit it in multiple different ways. So again, from physically initiating the project and digitalizing that, all the way through handpicking the plants or kind of the elements. I'll probably just move forward for the sake of the time. But to kind of experience this same setup in multiple three kind of stories and narratives. So the setup or the project is experienceable as a microhabitat through the lens of three different scales. So through the lens of a bot, through the lens of a human that flies through the project, and through the lens of a human voyeur, which kind of looks at the whole setup and watches it decay. And of course, at the end of the day, it is also a living room that you can just experience it as as a physical experience, a physical kind of view. So again, it starts to have these layers of experience and within the same project that kind of is triggered by cyber physicality of it as a nature of the project. But at the same time, they're layered in a way that, again, I would argue that it's not necessarily physical or digital, but this third quality that is emerging from the fusion of them. So on the website of the project, and I think it's still, I don't think, it's still available if you want to check it out. You can really access or you could basically watch the project in real time and experience it as a bug, quote unquote, to inhabit these kind of plant pockets as spatially kind of as you can. So again, what would it be to inhabit a lilium kind of flower spatially, or what would it be to, walk through in a hallway of, Brazil plant. I mean, one of my favorites. So again, the idea of inhabiting nature at this scale by miniaturizing yourself through the lens of a 360 real-time camera, and again, by putting either the goggles on or using your phone, you could do that. And again, what would it be to experience the setup through the lens of a curated fly-through using the camera? And again, it was during COVID again, and I'm not sure if it was during COVID or we were just overprotective, I don't remember exactly, but I was just having my friends over, I was just playing music there, again, just living as a like inhabiting it as a living room. But at the same time, again, the idea of having this flying ghost or flying butterfly, what I call butterfly human, to have a very curated pass through this over and over and over, watching this whole setup decay. So again, a totally different perspectival experience of the setup, of the exact same setup, but at a different scale, at a different kind of viewpoint, simply because the point of view has changed, not the project. And last but not least, again, the voyeur that is always looking at the whole setup from the same view, again, watching it as it decays over and over and over. So if you like, I think this is the video to one of the YouTube, or this is the QR code to one of the YouTube videos. I can double check, making sure I'm making sense. Yeah, so you would be able to experience the bug perspectives if you care, or if not, just feel free to check it if you're interested on my website. But yeah, I mean, it was basically working as a living room at the same time. But this is the view of your phone if you're kind of inhabiting this and putting it on goggles, or you can just use your 360 kind of video on your phone. Another of this category would be one of the latest 2024 Hyperion. So Hyperion is along the same line, again, something that I would say it's neither physical nor digital or virtual, but rather creates this in-between quality. The idea of the project is, again, in one line, maybe to kind of summarize it quickly, it's the question of reversing the human and non-human relationship in terms of their subject-object relationship when it comes to being viewed at. So, I mean, we tend to look at everything as the main subject and looking at everything else as the object of observation. Everything is on the spot for us to look at. Like we look at storefronts and things are at display. We are the subject that we are looking and they are all observed. So it's basically a simple question of what if a Baroque object, in this case Hyperion, the god of, again, the titan of observation in Greek mythology, what if Hyperion was looking back at us? And what would be the way that it looks at us? What are the memories that Hyperion is infused by or kind of enhanced by? And how would it look at us? So it's a simple question of non-human as the subject and everything else as the object of observation. And again, the idea is, or the project is, a speculative interactive AI installation that uses a custom-made, trained kind of AI model based on the aesthetics of Baroque architecture, the aesthetics of specifically Gian Lorenzo Bernini, but at the same time, aesthetics of Porto and all of that, that again simply looks back at us and sees everything else through the lens of the memories of Porto or memories of Baroque in this case. As an interactive real-time installation, again, the idea is how this subjectivity-objectivity relationship kind of works, and how would the this dialogue in between works. And again, on a secondary note, it was an exercise, quick an initiative exercise for the next project, which I'm going to show in a second, to test out media as a building surface. So it was a quick test run for real-time AI, which is what's going on. So it's kind of capturing the or looking at audience in real time as a real-time footage through the camera that is embedded into the object, and taking that stream into the processor, computer processor, and a custom-made AI model, and then translating that through its quote-unquote memories and feeding that back into those two screens. But again, the idea of having a setup or space looking back and then projecting this at the relatively architectural scale surface was another thing that I really wanted to test with this project. So again, the idea of media wrapped architecture, which I explored in some of my previous writings, or the idea of simulative motion, again, as a media wrapped surface on the architectural facade that kind of generates potential or generates quality, similar to what we've been doing. For instance, we were discussing actually that in my conversation with students during the glue conversation and launch, that it's something that we've been practicing in architecture for a while in, for example, tile works in Persian architecture, Moroccan or Moorish architecture, Porto, and all of that. The architecture is not merely a building or space of inhabitation. It is a political, social monument in a way that conveys messages. So you always have a visual kind of narrative on the building. You have a message, you have text, you have tile work that communicates something, painting, so on and so forth. And after modernism, of course, we started to kind of slowly, simplify some of these. So again, the idea of media wrapped, screen wrapped architecture as a way to bring some of those back and testing it here was one of the other intentions of the project, to see how can we take advantage of this new technology and embedding that into the facade scenarios of the building. And kind of, again, some of the still shots. And again, same thing with the chrome balls, trying to, again, deal with distortion and kind of media wrapped architecture, if you're wondering why chrome balls, because besides the fact that they're kind of, I like them. It's safe to say. But again, like theoretically, I think that there is a potential there that the distortion of the image has to do with this theoretical framework of projective kind of idea. So this one, quickly, I have it here just to back up. Again, it's not necessarily fully architectural project, but to back up the idea that I was talking about, the interactive kind of media wrapped architecture. So this is kind of a quick spin-off for at least today's conversation from Hyperion take on a facade or on a video wall in this case that is in real time interacting with the music that I'm playing. And this one is trained on the memories of Isfahan in Iran and the visuals and the imagery that is borrowed from Persian miniature. And as you can see again, having multi-sensory kind of surface that is reacting and all that, it seems to be one of the potentials of the media wrap kind of surfaces. And again, obviously, I think it goes without saying that the input can be really whatever. terms of the projects, this is the I think the one in action that starts to get a little bit more into the facade project, and probably the last in this sequence. Acrodoc, or to be more complete with the name, Rubber Dream Acrodoc version. It's a project that I was commissioned to do in collaboration with a curated storefront and as part of Akron Bicentennial celebrations. It's basically, it had 3 phases, one in collaboration with curated storefront and Akron Art Museum. But it's kind of the similar question as Hyperion, but this time looks at the rubber heritage of Akron, specifically the non-tire rubber heritage of Akron as the rubber industry's kind of capital, or world's rubber capital in the history, and tries to take advantage of the aesthetics of non-tire rubber history of Akron and give a rubber toy the agency to look back at Akron. So that's basically the simple scenario of the rubber duck. So this is the installation at Akron Art Museum, but again, it's again in simple story, it's the idea of an AI model, and I'll get a little bit more into the technical aspects of this. But the story, or the opportunity for a rubber duck as a toy, as a rubber toy, to look back and spatially understand the space as a non-human, and kind of look back at humans or space, or understand the space through the kind of through the memories, or through the aesthetical kind of ideas, or references from the Akron rubber industry. And in this case, different from rubber toy, from the Hyperion, we had a controller. If you can, I can probably pause this. So here, if you can see, so there we had a controller I had a controller for the participants, that they could change the level of rubber dream, what I call. So they could go all the way to what I call mundane reality, or all the way to this rubbery dream that is more and more kind of towards the aesthetics of the rubber dream, or things of that nature. And again, taking a selfie with it as a photo booth. But this is what you would see in real time. Again, the idea of looking at a looking at the world, or as at the human world, or physical world, or whatever you want to call it, through the lens of a non-human, and giving it the agency to look back and to kind of take advantage of its memories, or understandings of the aesthetics and all that. See, for instance, he now toned it up all the way to the rubber dream, and now someone is cautiously turning it back. Okay. So, but again, I thought maybe I'll just dive a little deeper in terms of where the aesthetic comes from, or how these models are I'll talk a little bit about how the models are trained. So again, Akron has this huge rubber industry kind of heritage, and part of the aesthetic that you saw in the videos are coming from the aesthetic of these toys, rubber toys from early on. And they were hyper-articulated, surprisingly, in terms of the ornamentation and articulation and all of that. So this is one of the documents that I studied when I was putting together the project formally, and also like when I was training the AI model, or the LoRa. But again, as you can see, you start to see some familiarity or similarity between what you saw in real-time generation and what you see here in terms of the models that or the toys that we have. So again, the idea of how to use, or how to do some or borrow some statistical references and then populating a data set and then using that data set to, again, obviously aesthetically inform or kind of initiate a project, but also most importantly, using that data set to initiate a workflow for your, again, in this case, AI model. So the initial data set was used to kind of train a LoRa model. So LoRa's are, for those of you who are not familiar, are low-rank adaptation models in AI, which are used to, I was explaining to some students that think about it as a kind of a mask that sits, or like a plugin that sits on top of a bigger model and modifies the way that it behaves. So this LoRa mod, and they're much lighter, so it's kind of like sitting on top and then suddenly changes the behavior of that bigger model, whether it's a stable diffusion, flux, whatever it is. So with the smaller data set we had, I generated the small LoRa, using that to train a mediocre LoRa to do a synthetic generation, and then using the synthetic generation, you get a bigger data set, and using that data set, you can really start to train big data. And then using all of those together, you can really start to get a proper LoRa model to then get a proper real-time synchronization and logarithm. So I thought it might be interesting to just mention that. And these are some initial tests of the single frame being fed into these LoRa models to see what we're gonna get, and tuning that further. And this is how it was received. Let me supporters that night. Very, very fine.
That's right. You got time. You got time.
Anyways, I wouldn't bore you with this. But again, this is the, and maybe I can slow down. But this is the controller. So they would use it to tune in like different levels of reality, but also they could press it and take their screenshot of their AI version of whatever, their selfies with their AI twin, if you like. So some stills from the event at Akron Art Museum, and these are the when you press the button, this is what you would get. And we had a QR code they could scan and get the photos afterward. But this is really the type of image. The project had second life in Akron Bicentennials as part of the Bicentennial Signature Week. It was it was right at the trailhead of the parade, and it was kind of serving as a public art. Again, getting closer to that facade effect or facade project that I was talking about. So there is an upcoming project that is going to be a full facade, but like this one is a little closer to that, I would say, and engaging the audience. But again, as I said, for me, maybe more exciting. It's really kind of the idea of occupying or kind of animating the facade. And this is what it was seeing during the parade. So again, see it through the lens of it. And yeah, this is during the parade. And the last stop for this so far was the
one that they're sponsored.
Yeah, so they make it like relevant to their business.
the Akron kind of children museum. so it's basically part of the Akron Children Museum, or was for a while. And so I'm gonna wrap it up very quickly at this last fourth phase. But what I'm gonna basically mention is a lot of these conceptual frameworks, a lot of these interests or discussions are usually kind of getting summed up or narrowed down in like a collaborative effort that results into a project of some sort and a publication. And again, I've been at least very lucky to work with James and Vahid on Purple Architecture project, and we've been able to really put this collaborative effort to create the book together, which really reflects on, especially with the structure. Again, I thought it would be a very missed opportunity if I come to Ball State and not talk about Purple Architecture. But but again, with the structure that the book has, I'm sure you're all familiar with the book, and it's choose your own adventure kind of structure. But we each had the opportunity to really frame the book in a personal way through our introductions, but also to reflect our collaborative effort through our discussions, and all of that kind of effort, I think, resulted in something that was not only a conclusion of a body of work that we've been doing, but also a provocation for what we are looking at and what we are kind of looking forward to do. So I just wanted to point that out, that I think one of the fruits of a lot of these efforts and collaborations and projects that I mentioned has been the Purple Architecture. And again, been very happy and lucky to collaborate on that with James and Vahid. And again, some of these discussions that we had, you can probably trace it back to the ideas of tools, the ideas of connectors, the idea of cyber physical in between, so the all of those scenarios that I mentioned in project category 1 and 2 and 3. And again, if you haven't already with the Purple, this is one of the, I think this is the trophy. So usually you would get this at the end of the book when you read it completely, but be my guest. And again, the same, another thing, I think a lot of the theoretical framework, I didn't really dive deep into it, that drives the Hyperion. The recent projects are also, again, discussed in my chapter in Vahid Wahdat's book, Animated Architecture, in my animation, simulative motion, and magical surrealism chapter. Again, introducing the concept of what I call simulative motion. Just reminding you that I'm still a formalist, and I'll probably be safe to say. And again, to frame it back in through the lens of Purple Architecture, we discuss fuzzy architecture that deals with the world of binaries, but trying to propose something that is neither 0 or 1, but rather, especially when it comes to physicality and digitality, try to question the confidence that we have about the physicality of architecture, and try to propose this question that potentially there is somewhere in between, that there is an architecture that is neither nor but and both, and it's cyber physical and probably less hierarchical. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention, and thank you again for having me. Thanks, Ballistic. Thanks, James. Thanks, Ebrahim.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Thank you, Ebrahim, very much. Big takeaway for me has always been in our conversations the different ways in which we can talk about interface, the role that architecture plays as an interface in different ways, and how the cyber-physical condition starts to expand upon that. And depending on our definition of architecture, to even question whether or not we right now are within a simulation. So with that being said, if anyone has a question, I can bring the mic to you, and we can keep this going a little bit. I know we're doing pretty good on time, so does anyone have a question? Just raise your hand. We got one at the top. Do you mind being loud.
For the In the Serenity of Your Eyes project, how did you translate like sounds to like physical visual forms? I thought that was very interesting.
That's a really interesting question, and I didn't know that one would be the one that captures attention. So I didn't know it's interesting, so I passed through. So so basically I've had, and I didn't include it, but I've had a few other musical projects, so that's kind of a piggyback on those. So where are you, by the way? Okay, thank you. I was just trying to. But yeah, so I've done one before. So it was a lot of troubleshooting with that one. That is a duet with a robot. So I think that would be a better answer. I can give you the answer to this one. This one is a little simpler than that. It's kind of basically analyzing the waves and the pitch and all the kind of physicalization of the tones that you can have, and the kicks, like whatever the Ableton type of analysis of sound could be, and basically using those to drive parameters. And in this specific case, driving those AI models with those parameters. So again, trying to connect the aesthetical kind of parameters of, in that example, the Esfahan quality or the Persian miniature quality and the specifics of the again, part of the game in that, more than the analysis of the music, was to break down the qualities of a Persian miniature painting to like some measurable qualities. So you can, like the dock project, so you can turn the knob back and forth. And then as soon as you have that quality quantified in a way, if you like, then you can start connecting those to another thing. So it's basically the result of the quantification of two qualities. One, the music, which is by nature, I think, quantifiable because you're dealing with volume, you're dealing with waves, you're dealing with notation, you're dealing with tones, nuances, those type of things which you can start tracking, and then connecting that back to the Persian miniature breakdown, which is a little bit subjective. So probably if you do break that down, it would be different than what I would do. But the one with robots had another layer, which again, part of the reason that I pointed that out was because of that. So it was also following body gesture. So it was tracking my gesture or pose or like the way that I use the instrument or play the instrument, also as a way to feed that to the robot, because it was following the camera. Yeah, basically something like that. But yeah, so I think for me, I think the key would be at the very beginning of the process to break down the qualities into the quantitative data and then linking those. I think then it's becoming a subjective process of like how you want it to be as a designer or artist in that case. But thank you so much for the question.
One of the things that Ebrahim didn't mention is that he's a very accomplished musician.
It's very kind of you, but thank you. I'll take it.
Well, the follow-up to that is, you ever have that friend who's like really good at everything and makes you feel like you're not good at many things? So
is that you? You're talking about yourself?
I am. There was another question. I thought, oh, yeah, Rosie, you want to speak up for me?
Yeah. So a lot of the I only even halfway through the lecture, so I apologize. The projects that I did see showed a distortionate reality, and I was wondering how you could take that technological distortion and create physical distortional architecture.
So I think that's part of the statement or question. I think you're kind of, to me, that's your question is part of the answer, frankly. So in both sense. So part of it is the idea of reality. So like how to define that as a question. Again, back to your point that maybe we are living in a simulation. That could be part of the answer or question that, what is it that is distorted? What is it that it's going back to its originality? That could be part of the answer that I can give to that question, that maybe it's not necessarily a distortion, but frankly, just giving agency. And I didn't maybe talk about it, but through the lens of concept like Shinto concepts of animism, which is a Japanese concept of everything being alive and having souls and all of that. It's kind of basically giving agency back that is taken away, and kind of giving that reality back in a way to other non-humans that are just as, again, which is connecting back to maybe triple conversation to post-human philosophy, to non-human centric kind of philosophy, and those type of conversation. And again, that has a legacy, of course, architecturally that we can borrow. But at the same time, I think the idea of a spatialization of some of these is something that, of course, again, we can look at it architecturally in terms of built space. But what I'm a little more interested in is the question of whether it, again, which comes with the fuzzy, it's the question of whether it has to be physical or it has to be built physically. And is there a possibility or room for something that is cyber physically experienced? So that's probably the interest of some of these projects, to question that, like when you're miniaturizing yourself and inhabiting visually a flower pocket, is that an architectural experience or not? And that's an open question. I'm not saying it is or not, but again, probably I'm saying it is. But so I think it's a provocation, maybe more than an answer. But at the same time, the same idea of aqueduct, for instance, if you can scale up a screen to the size of a surface at Aqueduct Museum, or if you can scale it up at the size of a facade at Akron as a city, why not you scale it up at the size of another building? And then if you start kind of scaling up media wrapped kind of surfaces, why not occupying media as an occupiable or as inhabitable thing? So for me, while I think there is a clear legacy trajectory theoretically to connect the post-human conversation to O, then to kind of the idea of post-human philosophy, and then there is a worth like 10 years, 12 years at least worth of kind of architectural work there. I think it's still there is also a new way to connect that into the cyber physical scenario. But if you're leaning or interested into the built aspect of it, I would, which is what I teach in my studios, I would lean towards the post-human aspect of this and an agency of parts. So that's what we do. So we try to liberate the parts from each other as a way to give them agencies and then bring them back as kind of agents and create this kind of productive friction. That's a lot of times when we do buildings in my studios, that's what we do, to kind of bring the same conversation, but in a way through the lens of a built environment. But thanks for the question.
Anyone else?
So one of the problems I always have when I play around with like auras, or I think it's like stable diffusion, the custom image generating models, is that there's always that factor of like how strong is the computer? Are these being run on like a cloud-based server and then being brought back and then augmented by the aura, or are these local processors that are being used?
The real answer is these are running local on a strong computer, but we were just talking about Comfy UI having a recent, or maybe, to my knowledge, recent. Maybe it was there out of I'm not a Comfy UI user, but I recently realized that you can run Comfy UI on cloud. Even if you're running it on your PC, you can run the computation on a cloud. Again, maybe it was there. Again, I'm not a Comfy UI user, which is a really good thing. So now you're not limited by off-the-shelf, models necessarily. So you have the freedom of doing your own custom thing, but at the same time, you're not having to work with work with a commission, work in a commission project. So then you have the setup like some of these projects had, So I'm with you on that. But sometimes also, I remember talking when we had because Hyperion was local on this machine. So that's the reason I brought it up is it was a little laggier than what I was really wanting to. And Carol Klein actually had a really good point when she was visiting for my grad studio review. Carol Klein, James, you visited afterwards, and Jason Binary. So I was showing the installation to friends and everyone. And Carol, surprisingly, she really, and she made me think, she really liked the fact that it was laggy, so it was not as smooth, but it was pausing enough on each of the frames to give you this kind of hallucinative quality. So what I'm saying, there might be some potentials in misusing these, or they are doing some things that you're not really wanting, but then it end up being something that could be desired in terms of, again, taking it as an agent and that agent doing something this time like as a hardware. But again, like long story short, I'm with you in terms of sometimes they can be like pain.
Yeah.
Of course. Thank you.
I just have a kind of a basic question about your statement about being a formalist.
Sure.
And so, I mean, I see some of these that are about just an extension of an experience, like you can be experiencing these things, but other things like the Bobo project was really more like an extension of making form,
Yeah.
right? So which one of the projects do you think makes you the most, that describes you most as a formalist? I just wanted to, like formalism, like making form and like talking about aesthetics rather than pragmatism, or like where do these fall in terms of pragmatics? But like which one of the projects is most connected to you being a formalist?
No, that's a really interesting question. So maybe again, one note about the formalism, and I think I kind of tried to mention it, but it's less about the form against the pragmatic or function. It's more through the lens of, again, the literature movement, formalism, and Russian constructivism. So it's more of a, as much as I try not to frame it as ideological kind of project, but it's more of a ontological in a way project that things exist through form, that type of thing. So it's in a way ontological, not to ignore necessarily function, but to prioritize form over function and then embrace function. So in a way, function cannot exist without form, that type of prioritization. But to your question, I think I would, like in terms of formality, I would still think the third category resonates the most with me, because they are more articulated and they're richer in terms of their articulation compared to your right one with Robot being maybe in a way formal, but blunt and kind of like just like whatever. And that's why that's more or less like an interface project for me, just getting the job done type of thing, versus I think as the projects grow, and they're not in a way chronological, so I kind of curate that based on the conversation we wanted to have today, but it happened to be also the oldest one among the ones. Yeah, it was. But yeah, so I think for me, probably Aqueduct, Hyperion, those are the new threads of projects that I'm probably framing myself as or with, I would say. Thank you.
Those maybe are the most ontologically confused too. Any other questions? If you have a question and you're too shy, you can also come up now and kind of do it one-on-one if you'd like. So with that, maybe we just say thank you to Ebrahim one more time, and great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.